Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Movement Cafe. It is good to see everyone. I always like to take that gallery view and scroll through and see folks that are here and just feel like I'm in such good company. And I'm hoping that you are also experiencing that sense of community being here together for the February Movement Cafe, where we are going to be talking about, what's happening at the conference level, the conference summits, the groups are organizing ways to talk within the church conference with leadership about creation justice, environmental justice, creation care, all the ways that we talk about creation, love of creation, land stewardship. Um, who has done that or is doing that work? How did they bring that about? How do they talk to their bishops about that? Because once you're bringing a summit like that into an organizational space, into your conference space, it's really important to say, hey, to my bishop, please come, please come, please help us plan, please promote this. Can you preach here? Can you talk here? Can you raise a prayer to indicate your support for this work? We have had wonderful responses from our bishops, from the Council of Bishops, about the work of creation justice in the conference, about the work of the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. And so we're growing this sense of relationship with our bishops. And that doesn't just mean sort of what the movement is doing, it's in every single annual conference. And really, really glad to have three teams here from three different annual conferences, coast to coast in the US. And we're going to get to hear from them about their experience doing these conferences and interacting with their bishops and other leaders. So yeah, this is the Movement Cafe. We meet every third Wednesday of the month. Next month, we'll be talking about land stewardship and our new land stewardship team. And right now, one of the things I really want us to do to get started is to just kind of acknowledge the day. We are landing here third Wednesday in February on a very, very special day. This is Ash Wednesday. And I don't know if folks have had a chance to go and take part in a service for Ash Wednesday or if they plan to. But I also know that many of us are dealing with some rocks of the moment in our lives, in our communities, how difficult things can be in some of the places where we live, some of the things that we're dealing with, some of the challenges to the justice work that many of us have done for decades. And Ash Wednesday is a time to acknowledge some of the difficulties with human beings and how we struggle to be in community together and how we struggle to be godly and walk with steps that are holy and to be in right relationship with our God. So I wanted to offer an Ash Wednesday readings this morning, which is different. It's morning for me, which is different than we usually do. So I hope that's okay with everyone because I'm going to go ahead and grab my Bible and start with Joel. And even as we start with Joel, which is a tougher reading, I want us to remember the words of John that the light shines in the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it. Blow the horn in Zion. Give me a shout on my holy mountain. Let all the people of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. It is near. A day of darkness and no light, a day of clouds and thick darkness, like blackness spreads out upon the mountains. A great and powerful army comes, unlike that has ever come before them or will ever come after them. Between the porch and the altar, let the priests and the Lord's ministers weep. Let them say, have mercy, Lord, on your people, and don't make your inheritance a disgrace, an example of failure among the nations. Why should they say among the peoples, where is your God? And then from Psalm 103. Let my whole being bless the Lord. Let everything inside me bless his holy name. Let my whole being bless the Lord and never forget all of God's good deeds. How God forgives all our sins, heals all our sickness, saves our lives, crowns us with faithful love and compassion, and satisfies us with plenty of good things, so that our youth is made fresh like an eagle's. The Lord works righteousness, does justice for all who are oppressed. God made his way known to Moses, made God's deeds known to the Israelites. The Lord is compassionate and merciful, very patient, and full of faithful love. The word on Ash Wednesday. The United Methodist Creation Justice Movement is very much a movement of faith within a tradition of the United Methodists, and much more beyond into our communities, serving because of who we are. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Velasquez Eberhardt, who will talk a little bit more about the movement itself. Go ahead, Kathy.
Greetings, everyone. So good to see so many folks, some familiar names and faces, and so many that I don't know. What a sign that our movement is growing and that good work is happening across the connection. I'm calling in today from, I'm a layperson in the Minnesota Annual Conference. And so that means a little bit something different these days to say that I've been here in Minnesota and experiencing what's happening here. The realities of, in addition to the trauma and the pain and harm of what is underway, what is also underway is a really growth of a movement of relationship and connection, and the way that that is then in turn becoming a response for caring of neighbor, for watching each other, for caring, providing mutual support. It is really organizing, really is all about relationship. And there's a number of times when the climate relationships and the church relationships that I've built over the last 10 some years has been put to good use at this moment as well. So as we come to talk today about these conferences, these summits, I was reminded that in many ways the movement, the Christian justice movement, started by conferences being held in the southeast part of the country. We were asked to host one here in Minnesota in 2017. Or 2018, there was one also in Tennessee in 2019. And out of that birthed the movement, which includes a number of work teams, includes our communications efforts, all of this, but really started by people meeting each other face to face and building relationships with our bishops. And so what's really lovely is that that effort that happened kind of across the denomination is now happening as kind of in a fractal kind of organizing way all over in conferences. And we're planning one in the North Central jurisdiction. The United Methodist Church is a great structure for doing this kind of organizing. So I'm going to stop talking, but just know that this work is really what we're talking about today is really fundamental way of building our movement and our connections and the inspiring people to take action. And so I'm glad you're all here today and hope this inspires you to take action as well. I'll turn it back to you, Rishinda.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. And keep an eye on the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. I notice some folks are already doing that. A lot of talk of snow in the chat. And that is a mixed blessing, right? It's so pretty outside, but also my car can't get out of the driveway. So, ups, little of this, little of that. So I want to just jump us into our good conversation today. And we have 3 annual conferences represented today. Western North Carolina and California, Nevada, and we're starting with the Virginia Conference. We have 2 members of the team that worked on the summit that they had in Virginia. We have with us Reverend Ellen Comstock, who's a retired elder living in Portsmouth. She served as a church pastor, but also an extension ministry and pastoral counseling. She is a transitional intentional interim ministry specialist. Now that's a mouthful, but we all know what that is, right? When we're in a church or serving a church, sometimes this interim specialists are really important folks to help us orient into relationship and into community. She's a global ministries Oath Keeper, trained in 2016, and clergy co-chair of the Virginia Conference Board of Church and Society, which also serves as the Creation Justice Committee. Also here is Dr. Karen McElfish, a Global Ministries Earthkeeper also in the Virginia Conference. That's what we're working with right now, and United Women in Faith president of that conference and a member of the Virginia Creation Justice team and co-chair of the conference legislative network. She also heads up the organizing team for the movement. So it's really wonderful to turn over the conversation to our Virginia team. Go ahead, Ellen and Karen.
Hi, so glad to be with you all. Ellen and I are going to divide this up a little bit. I'm going to introduce sort of our timeline of how all of this gets started, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ellen for the meat of it as we actually started to plan our summit. So this timeline, if you will, started out innocently enough. We talked about relationships and how important relationships are. As a district lay leader, I sat on the Board of Laity, and our then Bishop Lewis, asked prior to a Board of Laity meeting where she was going to be attending if anybody had any questions. Aha! I thought, here's my opportunity. And I said, how would you like to speak about at that point, new statement that had just come out from the Council of Bishops in November of 2021 about the response to the climate crisis? And she admitted that she didn't know very much about it, but did a little bit of research and came back to the Board of Laity meeting and basically read the statement to us, which frankly wasn't terribly helpful, except that it introduced all the other district lay leaders to the concepts of what was in that response from the Council of Bishops. We then requested meeting with her, and it was clear that this was not a topic that she knew very much about and frankly was particularly interested in. But there was also hidden in the background the sense of these upcoming special called jurisdictional meetings in November of 2022. And it was anticipated by the conference staff and the bishop that there would be some changes. And in fact, when SEJ met in November of 22, we did get a new bishop. We have now Bishop Sue Halpert Johnson, who came to us from North Georgia. So, bold as I may be, I took on and put my hat of Conference Legislative Network co-chair and met with her and basically called her office and said, hey, we're the group that does advocacy. We put on United Methodist Day at General Assembly. I want to talk to you about advocacy and having you involved, because I was told that she had a heart for advocacy. So I took that opportunity. And then when I met with her, I said, and oh, by the way, there's this thing called climate justice. And she was a lot more versed in it and a lot more interested in it. And so we were able to then start to develop a relationship. In spring of 23, she'd been there just a couple of months. I sent her an email and I said, Earth Day's coming up. Would you like to make a statement to the conference? And she wrote a lengthy, very well-worded statement with the help of the conference staff, which then was distributed conference-wide. We then started to have discussions with her about, okay, we have a creation justice team. We'd like to meet with you. And we set up a meeting, which ultimately happened then in August of 2023. At that time, we started talking about having an opportunity to bring stakeholders together. And we were very intentional about using that term stakeholder, meaning who all has a stake in this climate justice, and realizing, of course, that everybody does, but we started naming. It was the trustees, because they're in charge of the buildings and stewardship of the grounds. It was finance, because they're in charge of how we spend our money and how we save our money. It was United Women in Faith with our Just Energy for All campaign. It was the youth and the young adults, and the list kept growing. So we talked about having an opportunity to bring all of these stakeholders together at a summit, for lack of a better term, and proposed that we try and do something at the conference office with individuals from each of these stakeholder groups in November of 2023. So we're talking just a few months later. I think that was a bit too quick a momentum for the conference ultimately. And basically they asked, well, let's make that November meeting a planning meeting. So we brought in Reverend Kip Banks, who is a pastor in the Washington, D.C. area at a large Baptist church that had done a lot with the Anacostia River and the neighborhoods. And if you're familiar with Washington, D.C. area, this is a very poor, underserved neighborhood that he serves. But he was doing a lot in the church involving youth, involving the congregation, putting in rain gardens, talking about stewardship. So we thought he'd be a great one to talk with us from a little bit of an outside perspective and help facilitate. So we met in November. We had the bishop there, we had conference staff there, and we had 2 new directors of connectional ministry. And I point that out because that actually turned out to be somewhat pivotal. We had a great conversation, met for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. And what ultimately came out of it is that this is something that the youth and the young adults probably have the most interest in. So they're the ones that should take the lead. And it fell flat. Nothing happened. Ultimately, in late fall, early winter, we got word from the conference that with new staff and all of these changes, these new DCMs, that there was no time for a summit that year or any kind of action. So here we are in early 2024 with this flat. The other thing that happened in 2024, as many of you know, is General Conference. And I was lucky enough, responsible enough to be a General Conference delegate. So was involved with all of the machinations leading up to, during, and afterwards, and had an opportunity at the very end of General Conference, after all of this great legislation had passed, but in the last minutes of General Conference, divestment did not. And I was furious. I was really, really annoyed with the way everything had happened. And I basically took it out on our bishop gently, but said, this shouldn't have happened. We should really have been able to move this forward. And she assured me that this was something that she thought that the bishops should take up at this special called session that now is planned for this year. But that opened the door of, okay, we need to still be talking about this with her, and that she was willing to. All right, now we're at annual conference in June of 24, and we passed a resolution calling for the Virginia conference to develop plans for net zero. And Bishop Sue announced from the podium that she had asked the Creation Justice team to put on a summit about creation justice, about creation care. Aha, she's now announced it to the entire crowd. And we also took the opportunity, those of us on the team, to start networking with people there, saying, head of trustees was somebody I knew from Board of Nominations because we had served together. We had a relationship. Church and Society, we had Ellen, we had J.D. Hansen, who, by the by, was my best man at our wedding. So we had relationships. So we started building on those and looking at, all right, we can do this. We asked for a meeting with the conference staff, and that meeting happened then in August, just a couple of months later. And once again, it was clear that there were some real differences in understanding between what we wanted to do and what we wanted to have happen with the conference. They thought they were going to take lead of this, and we said, we're the ones with the expertise on climate justice. We need to be the ones. Plus, Bishop Sue has said from the conference floor, Creation Justice team is going to lead this. So they, being good doobies, called the bishop in for a meeting. We met with them, and the bishop basically said, yes, I want the Creation Justice team to do it. So we then, at that point, basically got our marching orders. I'm going to turn it to Ellen in just a moment, but to say that we had opportunities then moving forward in fall and winter to call individuals, important stakeholders in this, and to invite them and engage them in this work. One difficulty we had was identifying who those people were because there were not good records at the conference office of who was serving on what team. So that was a real challenge. But I want to point out two things. Further challenges included the change of bishops and the fact that they had different understandings, the change in the conference staff, and frankly, maybe a little bit of turf war, maybe a little bit of, this is my domain, I don't want to give it up, going on. And again, as I mentioned, the lack of good contact information. But we did have going for us that we had built relationships. That individually, we had built relationships, for example, Board of Laity, Conference Legislative Network, and our Conference Justice team. So those things stood us in good stead in moving forward. And I'm now going to turn it over to Ellen, and she can talk about how we actually planned it.
Thank you. So you have a sense that there was a lot of stop and start, but in that August, July framework, we reclaimed our stake in planning the summit. And basically we decided, okay, where are we going to have this? And JD Hansen, who is our lay church and society, says, why don't you involve Randolph-Macon College and Kendra Grimes? So I called Kendra and she said, yeah, we'd love to host this on our college campus in Richmond, Virginia, middle of the state almost. And we will involve Duncan Memorial Church, which is right on the campus as well. And she said, and I'll take care of the logistics. And for a lot of that, so we had three people. Corinne basically took care of bugging everybody that she could find who were stakeholders on the district and conference level. You had Kendra, who said, sure, I can make sure we have rooms with technology. I can make sure we have food. I can make sure you have all of those things that we need. Then I could take care of the programming for the conference. And it was a really good team. The one thing that we didn't have was somebody to do the platform for registration, of which I got bounced around at the conference office until one of the admins there, did a masterful job of making sure I got what I needed in terms of, and then rewrites, and then had a good relationship with the conference communications office in getting out whatever I sent in. There wasn't a lot of, oh, you could do this or offerings, but they were very happy to do what I asked them to do. We wanted a keynote person who was a person of color. When I'm already at the 12-minute mark, that's a problem. We looked for a person of color. We got Michelle Roberts from Delaware and area who worked with chemicals and climate and flooding. And then one of the things that I wanted to do was to get the stakeholders to meet each other. I wanted a World Cafe so that we would know who the stakeholders were in the room. So we met at tables with 5 or 6 people each and answering some questions. We're like, where did you first hear the term climate, environmental, or creation justice, and what does it mean to you? What's your perspective? And we answered that, wrote it out, and then moved to another table. And the second question for a different group of togetherness. Now that you've heard the differing definitions, how does it change your thinking? What new insights have you had since you listened to others? And what are your community's specific concerns? Then we did a fruit basket turnover again for a third round. And what are the important ideas that the church as a whole and the United Methodist Church in particular adds to the conversation on climate? So we worked together in teams, and really it was a small room for the 100 people that we had gathered, but the energy was huge. And that was I thought, a pivotal moment in terms of getting people really engaged rather than just kind of sitting in one chair. We had the keynote speaker that followed that. And then we went to lunch in the college cafeteria. We came back to work for workshops, and they are on the second page. And what I tried to do was to choose things that covered the waterfront for the people we thought might be coming to the summit. We did do CEUs. I got great help from Jonathan Brake from Earthkeepers 2016, okay, who can we involve that we, and in doing workshops, we put that on the college campus. We had students who were helping us with technology. We also opened up several workshops for youth and youth volunteers, and that was paid for through Lilly Foundation money, because one of the things that we learned is the conference did not have any money for us. Even though back in 2023, oh yeah, we can get money from this pot or that pot, they were not willing to help with any money. We had previously established a 501(c) for creation care, and that is where the money came for reimbursements and that kind of thing. Um, the bishop was very happy to come and speak and be a part of it, and she stayed the day with us and was very much a part of that during the workshops itself, which was very helpful for all of us. And I suspect I better be quiet. Um,
You're at 14 minutes and 43 seconds.
all right.
So that's great. That's perfect. And yes, I see Mel's comment in there is a PDF of that document that has already actually been shared in the chat, but I'm sure Kathy will share it again. Listening to all the layers here that Karen and Ellen navigated and sort of putting together what was a barn raising event, starting from scratch, being sent down the wrong rabbit hole at first. Oh, we'll let this group do it. But having someone passionate around bringing this forward is really kind of what it takes. They're breaking new ground here, doing new things. The changes in leadership, the adding in the CEUs, adding in stakeholder conversations, adding in representation, diversity, all the things I really felt needed to be in there to make the kind of layer cake that just knocks everybody's socks off at the buffet, frankly. And then you have this wonderful synergy that gets built around that. So thank you so much, Ellen and Karen. We're going to have breakout rooms where you will have a chance to meet with these teams yourself. So if you have further questions, you can add them to the chat and or save them up for the breakout rooms. We want to keep things moving today because we've got a lot of juicy stuff today to talk about. And we're going to turn now to Western North Carolina Conference. And our team members are Kim Richmond and Jonathan Brake. And I'm going to do a quick intro for those two good folks. Reverend Jonathan Brake grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. And his family is a charter member of University City UMC. Isn't that nice when you're like having this sense of really a home church? He was ordained in 2000. He was one of the first global ministries Earthkeepers in 2016, and his project included the start of a creation care ministry in the Western North Carolina Conference. So he helped launch that. He helped launch the movement that you are part of today, and serves in leadership roles for creation justice efforts, including at Global Ministries for their environmental sustainability program for a few years, and then back to pastoral appointment with Eco Missions and Creation Care Coordination in Western Nevada Conference. Kim Richmond is a commissioned Global Ministries Earthkeeper as well. I know many of us are. If you are, throw that in the chat. Like, shout out to our Earthkeepers. And also other people do lots of other trainings to grow themselves into this work. She is a climate reality leader, speaking of which we got to hang out together doing that. So that was pretty awesome. She's a bird nerd, her love of natural world and wildlife. And she wrote the legislation that passed by General Conference for Good Stewardship of Church Lands and contributed to other legislation that prioritized creation care across the United Methodist denomination. So I could talk so much more about these two wonderful folks, but I'm not going to. I'm going to turn it over to the team and let them take it from here. So go ahead, Kim and Jonathan.
All right. Thanks so much, Rashinda. As was mentioned, I am an Earthkeeper, but part of that was forming the Creation Care Ministry of the Western North Carolina Conference. I'm just going to start there and run a quick timeline of how we got up to the point we're at now of planning and about to pull off our first Bishops Climate Summit. So in 2017, we started officially the Creation Care Ministry in the conference here, and it grew steadily over the next few years. Through the pandemic, we were continuing to network. We were shifting from in-person to online like so many of us did. We were beginning to ask, what can we do more at the district level and at the conference level? And so in 2022, we sort of strategically came together, the handful of leaders, including Kim and myself and some others, and we strategically submitted some legislation at our annual conference, really to set up green church initiative program for our local churches. And this was a multi-purpose use there. One was to increase the awareness of creation care, especially in the local church level, and to find people out there who are interested in the work we were doing to continue to build momentum. Also in 2022, we partnered with the North Carolina Conference and created a position, a staff position that covered both annual conferences called the Creation Care Coordinator, that to raise the status of the work that we were doing in the conference office, because now there was a conference staff person, not just a volunteer helping to lead this. The same year, 2022, we set out an annual planning meeting that have been doing. We decided, let's have this at the conference office at a time when Bishop Ken Carter could be there with us. And so we met with our bishop and realized that if we were going to really get anywhere with him, we had to pay attention to the fact that a bishop's calendar, a bishop's table is covered with plates. He's already trying to carry so many different things and so many different responsibilities that we said to our bishop, listen, we want to partner with you so that our annual conference can do more and more in creation care and really deal with the justice issues that come along with that. And so we said to him, hey, let us be the hands and feet. What we need from you is to be the mouthpiece, the promotion, the one backing the efforts that we're doing. And we'll cover those with you and make sure you're on board with it. And if you will just help us get the word out and raise the level of importance among many people in our churches, then we'll help carry out what we need to be doing as a church. So in 2023, with his blessing, we moved forward with submitting some legislation to our annual conference that was to support what was going on to the 2024 General Conference around creation care and justice issues. And as was mentioned, Kim Richmond was a part of even writing some of that legislation that then went on to General Conference. But we did this strategically as a way to gain support among the church leaders, the clergy and the lay leaders across our conference, to make them more aware of the work we were doing, to get people thinking more about, okay, what is creation care? What is creation justice? What does this mean in our church? How do we do this? Oh, it's more than just recycling, some of those things that would often come up. And so as we kind of walked through doing this in our annual conference, we discovered that there was a need for training. So this awareness began to build needs for training, continued team growth. We developed green teams in congregations. We began having pre-annual conference trainings on the day before annual conference started for those who came up early and could learn from that. We promoted and built and grew our Earth Keepers base across our annual conference and things like that. That was in 2023. Then in 2024, it just so happens that the Council of Bishops decided they were going to do General Conference in Charlotte, right in our headquarters. And so we had this huge event going on that took up the air in the bishop's office. And so we just continued to work at the local church level, strengthening our district leadership. We began to do more on Zoom with a lunch and learn program about General Conference legislation. So our churches knew what was going on in Charlotte coming up that year. We increased our presence at annual conference. We recognized churches that were achieving our Green Church Initiative Award, and people began to ask, what's that all about? And so 2024 was a time of really setting things up for what we're about to launch this year. So in 2025, we sent some of our leaders up there to the Virginia Annual Conference Bishops Climate Summit, and they led some workshops and learned from the event design of what Ellen and Karin and others had done in Virginia, came back with some ideas, and we proposed this to our bishop that we wanted to do a Bishops Climate Summit in the spring of 2026. We weren't sure how he was going to respond, but he was so receptive. He was excited about the event. He was excited about what was needed for our clergy. And the planning that went along, he began to develop quotes for us, helped us with publicity. He even asked the cabinet, our district superintendents, not to plan any district events leading up to or around the time that our summit is going to be, so that clergy wouldn't have to choose between doing something at the district level or doing a conference event like the Bishop's Climate Summit. And so these were the things that were kind of moving along. And then last summer, I came on staff with our annual conference as our Eco Missions and Creation Care coordinator. And I began to go around and preach at churches and events and activities, and I would teach Sunday school courses and things like that. And I kept hearing over and over again from our laity, we want to hear more about creation care and justice. At the same time, our clergy were feeling like we're not really prepared to teach on this or to preach on this. It can be such a divisive issue in our culture, and it's so politicized, and we don't know what to do about it. We weren't trained in seminary. And so the bishop says to us, let's make this an event where we bring the leaders of our churches together, our clergy, our lay leaders, our trustees, our class teachers, and begin to equip them with what they need to take it back to their local churches. So all of that kind of came together, and has been a multi-year trail to get here. It's different for every annual conference, and we're just excited that we're able to do something here. Maybe there was an impetus on that from our bishop as well, because we were dealing in 2025 with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and trying to put back together literally the western half of our state, which is most of our annual conference. And so we've got this wind behind our backs, in our sails, if you will, to make this move forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim Richmond. She's been such an amazing organizer and planner in helping us put together this event. And she's going to tell you kind of where we took it from in the planning and putting together what's going to happen in April. Kim?
Hi, everyone. I'm pleased to be able to build a little bit more on what Jonathan has said. And I think one of the first things I want to acknowledge is that we have a little bit of a difference from where Karen and Ellen started in their annual conference, because they eventually got to a bishop who had prioritized this more. Our bishop, we were aware, already understood the value and benefits of creation care. As Jonathan said, he just had other priorities. And so by us coming in and saying that we will do this, things that we suggested have fallen on fertile ground. And so that helps, because I know that not every annual conference has that blessing in their situation. So let me try to pull up my screen here and screen share.
Looks
there
good.
we go. So we have Bishop Carter that we're talking with. And as Jonathan said, we attended Virginia Conference's their climate summit. And so what Bishop Carter said to us when we reached out to him was, you don't have to convince me, just have a draft format put together, and when we get together, let's talk about it. And so we really took the format from Virginia Conference with their permission. They've been very gracious to share everything with us. And we offer you that as well. If you're interested in doing something, we will be glad to support you and to provide that to you. But we went in with this, and as Jonathan said, I mean, we just got enthusiastic acceptance. We had lots of suggestions, and we didn't incorporate every suggestion, but we certainly tried to incorporate as many as we could, because we intentionally named this one the Bishop's Climate Summit, because we were really trying to get those who might not just be already interested in creation care, that we would have that, I guess, support this authenticity that comes from the authority that comes from recognizing that the bishop is partnering with us in this. So we took this to him got lots of suggestions, came out of this with lots of things that we still wanted to do, but we are also blessed in that, oh, I went a little too fast there. We are also blessed in that we, as part of our team, we have two people who are members of conference staff. Jonathan, of course, is one of those, but also Brian Mateer, who is the director of missional engagement, is on conference staff, and he went to the the sessions and asked for additional funding. I recognize that Virginia didn't have that benefit as far as from their conference staff, but he got $3,000 additional funds for us to dedicate to this summit. And that was definitely helpful. So we have the approval, we've got the funding, and now we begin the planning. And one of our key challenges that we wanted to address was not just attracting those who already are concerned about creation care and what the church should be doing, but we wanted to reach out to others who might not understand why the church is even talking about climate change. And so, in addition to the summit, we came up with 3 pre-summit webinars that were really to set the stage for the reasons for the climate summit. And so we were very intentional in making sure that we selected topics, presenters, very specific to include the faith perspective, and to make sure that not only the faith and the Christian perspective, but we had presenters who are primarily from the United Methodist Church. So they were the ones who have been tasked with explaining the science in connection with the faith and lay the groundwork for why we are even having the summit. It also gave us the opportunity to promote the summit each time we promoted one of the webinars. And so over like a 4-month period before the summit, or even 5 months, I think we first advertised this in December, we were able to get this before the local churches so that they would see that we have something coming up. So we were trying to build momentum and interest and anticipation from doing this. And so far, we feel like we have done this fairly well, because we've had over 100 people register to attend each of these webinars, and that is more than we had ever had in any of our programming prior to this. We still don't know how many will attend the summit, which is going to be another measure of how well we address this challenge, but that's still to come. So hopefully we'll get there too. Now, for the Bishops' Climate Summit, we gave it a sub-theme, a subtitle of "For Such a Time as This," because we wanted to suggest action. We want people to know that it has to happen now, not in a month, not in a year, not in a few years, that the time that we need to respond to climate change is now. And so we did that. We also designed the day of the summit, which, like I said, we followed Virginia Conference's their framework because it worked. We want it to be a day, not of facts, but a day of connection and building relationships. And we did that. We were going to have a worship. They will be able to lament, listen to each other, speak, share, grow, learn, and then go home with some actions that their churches can do. So we did the same thing. We set up workshops. They are all action oriented. We have 9 workshops from which they can choose. And in addition to that, then we did not view the summit as the end event, but as the beginning, because we want it to be the baseline for continued conversation and programming. It's going to be the theme for our tabling at annual conference. We're going to put together additional programming. We're happy to share that with you. Here's our email address. And my time is up, but if you're nearby and want to attend the summit, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, you're seeing like we kind of had our barn raising group that sort of just had to sort of push through, build those connections. And then we've had this sort of foundation group building, sort of brick by brick, if you will. And even to the point of these early webinars, sort of a warm up and creating this inclusive interest as they go with information that people might want before sort of being a babe in the woods at a climate summit where we're all learning together and really setting that connectional goal. I really, really like that. We're going to move now to our next group from Cal, Nevada. And as promised, I have a picture to share. I had the absolute privilege of getting to attend this summit because I live close by. And you can see these adorable people right here are, this is Burke and Joan, and in the middle is Jake Barnett with Westpath, who also attended their summit. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. Reverend Burke Owens is a member of the California Divided Conference, serving churches throughout the San Francisco Bay Area, ordained as elder in 2018 with a Master's of Divinity from the Pacific School of Religion. He grew up in England, went to college in New York City, and lived in a spiritual community in upstate New York. And this call to the Spirit, he says, has been a lifelong pull for him. And I think we can all absolutely recognize that. He was serving as chair of finance at the time of the summit. Reverend Joan Pell is a retired elder in the Northern also California Nevada Conference. She is the caretaker of God's Creation Coordinator and the chair of the conference Creation Climate Justice Ministries Task Force. She maintains the task force at this website, which we will drop in, and enjoys time with her grandkids, advocacy, and justice. And I think a lot of us can absolutely recognize that as well. I'm going to stop share here. And just turn it over to Burke and Joan. Joan is also coordinates the Western Jurisdiction conversation for the movement. So if you're in the Western Jurisdiction, reach out to Joan for that as well. And go ahead. I'm not sure who's starting, but I'm turning it over to the team.
Well, hello. I'm starting, and it's an honor to be here sharing about our California Nevada annual conference work with you today. We have not had a conference level creation care or climate justice conference, but as Rashenda said, we had a conference divestment summit involving our current bishop, Bishop Sandy Allwine. And Burke will talk to you about that in a moment. Our Climate Justice Ministries Task Force is one of several task forces that reports to our Conference Advocacy and Justice Committee. And Reverend Sharon Delgado, who is the convener of Fossil Free UMC, a great group, along with other folk in our annual conference, brought legislation nearly 4 years ago now to our annual conference session in June 2022 to establish a Climate Justice Ministries Task Force when Bishop Sally Dick was presiding as our interim bishop. Sharon became the chair of the task force for the first 2 years, and I was a member of the task force from its first meeting. And 2 years later, in July 2024, I became the chair of the task force. But just before I took over as the chair, our task force took some legislation about divestment to our annual conference session in June 2024, when Bishop Minerva Calcagno was our bishop. And the legislation proposed that all conference money must be divested from fossil fuels by the end of 2024. Well, after that proposed legislation was published in the weeks leading up to the annual conference session, we were approached by Paul Ekstrom Fernandez from our California Nevada Board of Pensions to say that he was unable to support the recommendation in the way that it was currently worded. He explained that although he was generally supportive, there were some issues with the specifics. And not wanting at that point to get into a long or contentious debate on the conference floor, we worked collaboratively with him to find a solution. And we moved forward by taking a replacement recommendation to that 2024 annual conference session. And Burke's going to tell you all about that.
Thank you, Joan. And just a point of correction, Rashenda, thank you for your introduction. It was lovely. I'm actually from New England, and Joan is from England. You can probably tell our accents are a cue on that. Otherwise, all the information was correct. I am the former chair of the Council on Finance and Administration for the California Nevada Annual Conference, still serving on that council. And so when this resolution was brought forward that Joan just mentioned back in 2024, we were in the process of going through a lot of Episcopal changes, and that continued really through the time of holding the summit. But in 2024, the choice was made to look toward reducing to 10% or below any fossil fuel investments from any of the California Nevada investment agencies, such as Board of Pensions, Foundation, et cetera, as well as the annual conference itself and our treasurer's office, in order to have us be more in sync with a more appropriate way of trying to push down fossil fuel investment and use of fossil fuels. So the choice was made to not only encourage this, but to hold a fossil fuel divestment summit in order to make the information that much more readily available to those investment agencies, to district unions throughout our annual conference, and to others outside the conference that might be of interest, local churches in particular, of course. So this was something that it took a great deal of planning because even though on paper everyone is in favor of fossil fuel divestment and on climate justice and on reducing the amount of misuse of the planet's resources, when it comes down to the practical discussion of it, as Joan just alluded to with Paul Ekstrom Fernandez of Board of Pensions, the devil is in the details. So, in order to put together this divestment summit, we really needed to build stronger relationships between CFNA and these investment agencies and bring the focus of climate justice and fossil fuel divestment to the front of the conversation rather than just as something extra. That being said, it was really wonderful to see that though Bishop Sally, who'd been with us for a period of time, was very supportive of this idea and of fossil fuel divestment. Bishop Carqueño, who came back after her leave of absence, I don't think was particularly interested in it. She wasn't against it, but she wasn't really supporting it. Luckily, our new bishop and current bishop, Bishop Sandy Olwine, has been very positive and in favor of the fossil fuel divestment as well as climate justice in all of its various issues. So once we actually established the dates for holding the Fossil Fuel Divestment Summit, which is the later part of March of last year, 2025, at the annual conference offices, Bishop Sandy took a much larger role. She gave the initial prayerful opening, as well as stating her great belief in the importance of this issue. She asked very penetrating questions and made good comments throughout the time. She attended, I think, almost all the sessions because we went from a Tuesday night through Wednesday afternoon and had roughly 6 different speakers. So she was never a full-on speaker other than her opening comments, but she was definitely an active part of the discussions. And it really does make a difference to have the Episcopal authority and support in issues like this because some of our investment agencies are still late to the table, perhaps, at seeing the importance of this. They have concerns that it'll mean that their investors will not be reaping the benefits that they might be. And certainly our current issues nationally and with the federal government point to that same lack of understanding that bedevils our investments in general. So, Bishop Sandy's support made a big difference. The commentary that was brought in from both Westpath and other agencies throughout the connection really made a big difference in, I think, helping our investment agencies in California and Nevada see the importance of shifting to this 10% or less in terms of ensuring that we're not investing in anything that's actively developing, selling, producing, uncovering, bringing to market any fossil fuels. And at this point, we're in a much better place with that. The major outcome, I'm not keeping track of my time, so I'm trusting that you are, Rakenda. The major outcome, other than the good discussions and conversations that went forward, was a resolution that was brought forward for the 2025. And I'm just going to pull that up now. This was sort of a revisit to the resolution from 2024, whose main import was that we would hold the fossil fuel summit. In this case now, it was resolved that this is the 2025 resolution for fossil fuel divestment that was brought to the annual conference in June of this last year and was approved. But it was resolved that California and Nevada Annual Conference will endeavor to meet the goal that all California and Nevada conference boards and agencies' investment portfolios will be transitioned to fossil free through screening out companies that own coal, oil, and gas reserves, and companies whose core businesses is to produce coal, oil, or gas investments in low carbon portfolios. That is, containing under 2% of such companies. And this was, after much discussion, it was realized that to go align ourselves with Westpath's social value equity investments made the most sense because, you know, we found the discussion of trying to be zero, 100%, no question of all of anything to do with fossil fuels is difficult to get to that place, at least at this time. So by working with Westpath, which is what some other annual conferences have done that have gone this similar route of becoming fossil free to the best of their ability, it seemed like it really made good sense. So in this way, we were able to hold the summit, share the information, hear from speakers who with great knowledge and expertise, and be able to make a choice consciously to go forward as an annual conference that would allow us to be as fossil free as possible, knowing that 2% and less, there might be some crossover that happens, but working toward being 100%. That this seems like a reality-based approach that I think has been so far successful, and we're looking to revisit this again when we come back together for our 2026 annual conference and check in on how all the investment agencies are doing. So I think it was a inspiring time. It was a time of realizing that there's a shared interest and valuing of fossil free and of taking care of our planet more successfully, appropriately. And I'm really glad that CFNA was able to play a leading role in this, thanks to the good work of Joan and Sharon Delgado and many others, such as yourselves, that have been working for years to ensure these kinds of changes can take place.
Thank you, Burke. I'm going to speak now more about the relationship that we have built with Bishop Sandy Olwine since she became our bishop in September 2024. And obviously, the work at the summit was part of that. General Conference 2024 modified paragraph 603.4 in the Book of Discipline to say the annual conference sessions shall be held in places that are accessible to people with disabilities and that, when possible, have sustainable practices for energy, waste, and consumption. So, in September 2024, our Climate Justice Ministries Task Force approached the Commission on the annual conference session to ask if we could have one seat at the table. And they said yes. And our task force decided that I would be the one to attend the meetings. It's a hybrid meeting which meets about 6 times a year, with the in-person attendees gathering in the conference office in Sacramento. Bishop Sandy attends each meeting in person, and so do I. And this has been an unexpected, wonderful way to get to know the bishop and have some casual conversation with her and build up a relationship. It has led to several good things happening. For example, each of our task forces has one page on the conference website. And I mentioned to her that we really needed more web pages or our own website, and that I had briefly suggested it to the conference communication team. Well, she said that she would support that. And then she personally spoke to the comms team and asked me to talk to them then about the best way to decide for it to happen. And so with her backing, we now have our own website, climate-cnumc.org, that our task force edits and maintains, with the communication staff as admins in case they're needed. And while we've not had a conference-wide creation care or climate justice conference, we do have a team putting on a one-day Earth Connect retreats twice a year in different locations in the conference. And Bishop Sandy has just offered to make a short welcome video for our next retreat. We just had that as an idea and asked her. And while she's unable to attend it, folk will now know that she supports them. Way back in 2012, our conference established a core team whose job it is to oversee the mission and values of the conference. And the vision statement for the last 3 years has been following Jesus, thriving in community, healing the world. And in 2026, they're concentrating on healing the world. Well, creation care and climate justice clearly fit under this topic. So Bishop Sandy recently took the time to meet with our task force and listened to our successes and challenges and gave us encouragement and ideas for fitting into the Healing the World theme. She stressed to us the importance of also building a good relationship with the core team, since they drive and implement the general direction of the conference. When we met with the core team chair, he told us that the core team were working on a Lent devotional and asked if we'd be willing to participate. Of course, we responded yes. So the core team then decided that there would be one whole week to reflect on the topic of restoring God's good earth, healing creation. And subsequently, members of our task force have written a week's worth of devotions for the core team. And if you're interested, the devotional starting today, Ash Wednesday, at the link that will be appearing in the chat box. There were a few other things that we discussed in that meeting that we had with the bishop that might lead to some other developments in the next few months. I won't say more about them at this point, but it's good to know that our bishop supports our work. Every conference is different, as is each bishop. So we've looked for and taken opportunities as they've sort of organically arisen or bubbled to the surface, worked to build relationships, and we've explored things that have matched the interests and abilities of those on our task force. So our thanks really go to Bishop Sandy. So do check out our website, climate-cnumc.org. Thank you for watching and listening.
That's awesome. So one of the cool things about the summit in Cal, Nevada is that it was live streamed at the time the speakers were, not the conversations afterwards, which were, done in sort of that Methodist conferencing way. But so you can see what folks had to say about it. Julia Frisbee from Pacific Northwest talked about what does the divestment fund look like in the United Methodist Church and how well it's performing, which is really encouraging. And we also heard from Dan Cohn and other speakers. And these really help inform conversation. The other thing is, you notice some have legislation that brought it about. Some had sort of a growth of grassroots work. Some is this foundational work. There can be nervousness from bishops around annual conference legislation, right? And some of them are like, please don't do that. Well, if we're not making progress, we have to do it somehow. And so I think that it's something that maybe you don't start with necessarily, but if the conversations that you're having with your conference leadership aren't getting you where you need to go, something to think about. The other thing you can do is, if you're clergy on this call, you can have that church use of the church property is kind of underneath your purview. And so if you want to bring in a climate justice summit in your area, and I did this when I was serving a church, I did a minister's training. And you can, now it's not a big conference training, but these are possibilities for laying groundwork. The kinds of things that you can do. It can be very helpless feeling sometimes when you're like, man, how do I even start? And so these are ideas for how you can get started, how you can work with people who understand the urgency, who become stakeholders, who can help just bring things about. One last thing I want to flag in talking with bishops is that the World Council of Churches, the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church have all come together to create a new feast day. The first one in over 100 years, on par with like Christmas and Pentecost. This is a new feast day. The last new one was Christ the King Sunday. It is called the Feast of Creation, and it is sort of focused on God who creates. I'm dropping a link in the chat. So these are other things bishops attend to, is the worship life of the community. This is September, the first Sunday in September, which is tough for U.S. churches because of Labor Day, but doesn't matter. There it is. So that's yet another layer for talking to your bishops. So sorry to jam all that in there. We are going to move to breakout rooms, which is a wonderful opportunity for everybody to have a chance to talk to our presenter teams. We will have 3 breakout rooms, one team with the Virginia Conference team members kind of talking about the barn raising effort, one with the Cal Nevada folks talking about the specialized sort of annual conference effort to get these things going, and Western North Carolina that have been doing this groundwork for years, and this is really bubbling into fruition, or whatever it is that you would want to talk to your these teams about in your own setting. So let's move off to our breakout rooms, and we will see you in a few. Welcome back, everybody. I think we're going to be coming in a little at a time. Good to see folks, and I hope you had a good and generative breakout session. In a minute, I'm going to ask folks from the rooms or for the leaders to share kind of if there was something that came up in the room that you wanted to share more broadly in our return space. Before we do that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy. Sorry, Kim. Kim went, what? Turn it over to Kathy, who is going to kind of walk us through some of the links from the chat, some of the resources that are available. Go ahead, Kathy.
So lots of things were put into the chat. Don't be too worried about that. We try to collect them and include them with the recording. It will all be on the main February Café page, but you can also save the chat if you really want things urgently. I just put 3 new things in the chat that I wanted to lift up. You've been hearing a lot of talk about resolutions, and every year, and again this year, the Creation Justice Movement has put forward a series of model resolutions that you may want to include at your annual conferences if there's still time to get them included. But the other thing that's separate from that is we've been talking about summits, but the Council of Bishops is actually having their own leadership summit in the fall in Calgary. You can read more about it. They're really for the whole purpose of the church, for the whole future of the church. And they're asking for people to fill out a survey to share what we think should be discussed there, what we think should be part of the future of the church. So we encourage you all to click on that link about the survey and provide your input. And then also to make connections with the people from your conference who will be going. Each bishop gets to appoint 3 people. And so there's 3 people per Episcopal area. And you should look through that. I just did that today and you're like, oh, cool. I know some of those people who are going. I'm going to keep up my connections with them. So I'm going to turn it back to Rashinda to moderate feedback from our groups, but breakout groups, but wanted you to have those 3 resources.
Thank you, Kathy. So yeah, we usually kind of try to max our time here. So we are close to closing, and we'll have a final closing prayer. Don will lead that. But we have room for 1 or 2 folks who want to. Does anybody have something bubble up in the breakout room that they'd want to share? Go ahead, Burke.
Refilleries. I'm embarrassed to say I'd never heard of refilleries. It reminds me of the old days going to the co-op where you'd bring your own container. But that's a really good sign that this is happening on a broader basis. So thanks for sharing that information, those in our breakout room.
Awesome. Right, that shared collective knowledge trickles down, and our legislation in our Book of Discipline does say like sustainable practices. So that's pretty cool. Anybody else?
Another good saying, starve the landfill.
Starve the landfill.
Zero waste. God is green.
Yeah, starve the landfill. I like that. It's got to be options to just dumping things. Absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Just in ours, we had a few people and a couple are interested in summits. And so we're connecting with them, and one is possibly going to attend. And so the opportunity to have to present this type of thing on a nationwide basis is just amazing. And I want to thank everybody who puts this together, but I also want to thank everybody who takes the time to attend. It's just great. Thank you.
There is something in the spirit, isn't there? When you get to go, it's formative, it's uplifting. There's a reason why conferencing is such a thing for Methodists. Go ahead, Joan.
We just had some questions about websites and somebody who didn't have much on their conference website and things. So I just said, take a look at what some of the other conferences have done. And I've just put the link in the chat because the movement's got a page of who's got what on their website. So that link is in the chat right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Joan. And I think we have room for one more, which would be Karen. And then we will close on time, which is one of our things, and turn over for Dawn. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, so we just put in a plug there was a discussion about people being in different annual conferences, but having similar concerns or similar geographic areas. And one of the important reasons why we have the jurisdictional meetings. So a plug for attending the jurisdictional meetings, being involved there, and raising those kinds of suggestions. If you've got something that you want to work on with somebody else in another annual conference, those are good places to be.
Amen. And I was close enough, I could pop down to the CalNev one, and that made a wonderful opportunity for me. And Kathy, I think, is the Northeastern jurisdiction, are they working on a conference together?
Yeah, we're working on a North Central Jurisdictional Conference for July, and we're trying to do that in conjunction with Church and Society that is trying to hold jurisdictional conferences. I'll put something about that in the chat as well. So you may partner there as well.
Yeah, lots of opportunities. What looks like fresh, beautiful ground in your conference is, that's where the plantings can go. Okay, well, we are at our time of closing. So I would like to just thank all our presenters. Thank you so much for being here and all the work it takes to put together a presentation to share and how much that matters. And I want to turn it over to Dawn to pray us out.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashenda. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And to our presenters, that was a wonderful cafe. I learned so much, and I just appreciate everybody's time. I usually try to pull something together for the prayer, but this time, because it is Ash Wednesday and Rashenda opened with that in mind, I'm going to close with a prayer I actually found on the Methodist website. So let us pray. Merciful Creator, on this day of ashes, we confess our negligence. We have often lived as though we are separate from the earth, treating your creation with indifference and consuming its resources without care. We repent of our waste and pollution and our lack of concern for those who come after us. As we wear this dust, remind us of our deep connection to all you have made. Renew in us a desire to be guardians of life so that we may, through our Lenten sacrifices, restore our broken bonds with nature. Amen.
Oh, that was perfect. Amen, Dawn. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here with y'all.
Mm.